So, we are, of course, ready to get started here once again as we share a topic very close to my heart and something that I believe Yahweh revealed to me a few years ago, and something I feel maybe one of the most important studies I've ever done toward those who are believers. And I say this because Messiah himself puts a great amount of emphasis on this, and even speaks to us in our generation today about this very thing. And so it is extremely important. We shared last week a study called Thy Kingdom Come. If you missed that study, please go back and watch it before you watch this one if you can. But, if you missed it and you don't want to go back, that's fine too. But I'm just saying there are going to be some things in the previous study that are very important, and I'm going to cover them briefly here before we get started, that you really need to see, I feel. It's my conviction here. And so please do that. And this is so important. And today's study, if you have a family, if you have children, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of watching this broadcast here, this particular study at least, to the end. Because there's some things here toward the end that I'm really going to put emphasis on that can really help your family. And so anyway, our study today is entitled, wrong one, A Vision for the Kingdom. A vision for the kingdom. And we need to have a vision. We need to have a vision for Yahweh's kingdom in our hearts. We need to see the end. We need to see the goal before us. We need to recognize Yahweh's plan for our life individually. We talk about the importance of observing Yahweh's commandments, and that is the will of our Father in heaven. But how many of us recognize that Yahweh also leads us by His Spirit in specific plan for our life, not just something necessarily written down in Scripture for the general masses, but something written for you, something written on your hearts for you. He wants to write this plan, this goal, this vision on your heart. He wants you for Yahweh's army, and forget the U.S. Army. That's all, and the militaries and all the things of this world. That won't mean anything in the age to come. What's going to matter in the age to come is whether or not you realized how drafted you were and the vision He's called you to observe and to walk out. We are created with a vision. Adam was created for a purpose. In Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, it says, Then Elohim said, Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So Elohim created man in His own image. In the image of Elohim He created him. Male and female He created them. Then Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Needed to be subdued. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And so He gave man, when He created man, He gave man 4 mandates in the book of Genesis. He said, Fill the earth. He said, Subdue the earth. He said, have dominion over all living things. And he said, be fruitful and multiply. Now, Yahshua the Messiah, when he left his disciples in Matthew chapter 28, this is the earth. I'm sorry, I didn't include this part. So this is the place of our dominion. This is the place of our personal dominion, this globe that we live on today. We fulfill these 4 mandates. Yahweh gave us reign over the earth. Now, he's ultimately our king. We have a king we answer to. But, when Messiah comes and reigns for 1,000 years, and we reign with him, that's because we were created to rule over this planet. This is our place of dominion right here. And so when Yahshua comes in Matthew 28, and he speaks to his disciples, and he says, it says in Matthew 28:18, he said, Yahshua came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Do we realize this is one of the reasons we know the writings of what's called the New Testament as a direct link and direct correlation with what's called the Old Testament? Because it says in 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says, therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. We are a new creation, and he's giving us a mandate as part of this, who we are. When we die in the watery grave, a baptismal grave of immersion, and we're baptized, we have a mandate as a new creation. It says, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. If we're making disciples, we're a disciple ourselves. This means we are being fruitful and we are multiplying. There's more than one of us now. Now there's 4. Now there's 8. Now there's 16. Now there's, you understand? The dominion mandate Yahweh gave Adam in Genesis is related to what Yahshua told us to do. And we're called to subdue the earth. We subdue the earth. We are from the earth. We are from the earth. We are created from the dust of the ground. We have areas in our life that need to be subdued under the King of Kings. And so when we begin to follow the instructions of our Father in heaven, we are taking a part of the ground from which we were made, and we are causing it to be subdued under Yahweh's kingship. There is a divine connection between these two scriptures, and it's awesome. I think it's just awesome. That revelation right there amazes me. I stand in awe of that. That we have this word in front of us, this Matthew and other scriptures, and how it just all comes together and blends so beautifully, so awesomely. Listen, if you have children, I can't stress this enough. You need to hear and you need to apply this message today to your life. At least the foundations we're talking about. If you're training your children to do the right thing, that's all well and good. But training alone, unless it's trained in a certain way, may not motivate them to righteousness. There are so many competing forces in the world. And I'm not coming to you as Mr. Expert Child Trainer. I'm coming to you from one who has learned things out of mistakes, out of failures, out of errors, out of misunderstanding, of not realizing how important this really is. And so I'm going to share with you the importance and the blessing of having a vision, and how a vision can motivate us to accomplish purposes for which we were created. And, when he didn't just create Adam and Eve and say, put them in a glass case and say, wow, look at this beautiful thing I made. No, they're living, they're breathing, they're vibrant. There's life to them. He created you the same way. Not to sit in your little houses and look pretty. He created you to take dominion, to subdue the earth, to tend to His garden, and to keep His garden. It says Yahweh Elohim took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and to keep it. This was an illustration. He had a vision for them. And He has a vision for all of us as a new creation in Messiah Yahshua. He desires that we would tend to His spiritual garden, the planting of Yahweh, the trees of righteousness, that He might be glorified. He desires us to be fruitful ones in our garden, bearing the fruits of His Spirit, and multiplying by going therefore. But it takes death for that wheat seed to go into the ground and die. Only then can it bear much fruit. I mean, a dying of the old ways and a renewal of the mind, a transformation that will cause us to bear fruit. Yahshua told His disciples, Matthew 9:35 says, Yahshua went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom. I don't like to say gospel, by the way, because you ever wonder why I always say good news instead of gospel? It's because gospel comes from two words, God, spell. That's where it comes from. So I don't say gospel. Anyway, preaching, besides it means good news is what it means. Preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. He's going out He's taking dominion, isn't He? But when He saw the multitudes, He was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Do we have compassion on the multitudes like He has compassion? Does His compassion flow through us? Then He said to His disciples, the harvest is truly plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Master of the harvest to send out laborers into His harvest. Yahweh has a harvest. Do we see that? He has a harvest. And He wants us to go out and bring them in. He needs laborers. We have a garden to keep and tend. Yahshua wants us to be a laborer in this harvest, as Yahweh wanted Adam to tend and keep the Garden of Eden. So it is for us. He wants us to tend to His garden. And the Pentecost, the Shavuot we celebrated this past week, that's the reminder. We are the wheat harvest. He desires that we'll go out and plant the seed of His word in the hearts of other men, so He can accomplish His good pleasure with it. The word Eden is Aden in Hebrew, and it means pleasure. It means delight. And so, Yahshua has gone, and he did His part. Now He lives in us. All power and authority has been given to Him, but the inhabitants of the earth are given over to His enemy. And we as the people of Yahweh have been sent on this search, rescue, and recovery mission. You know something? Most people are sitting in their easy chairs while he sent you out. Now, how did he send you out? In what manner does he send you out? And what calling does he have for you? What vision has he placed in your heart? Not everybody is going to be teachers. Let not many of you become teachers. I'll tell you what, I got stricter judgment on me. But I can't help it. This is what Yahweh called me to do. So I have to be courageous and do it. And trust that Yahweh is not really a hard man, not really a hard Elohim. He's a merciful Elohim. But we all have a part in this, and I'm going to get more into that as we go along. But, when we go out, we may lose a few battles, a few skirmishes, but ultimately, we win the war. And as soldiers, we've been called to go out and do exploits for the King of Kings. As a people who are in exile now, and we're living in Babylon, and we're trying to raise children of Jerusalem in Babylon. That's not an easy task. But we're seeking, we got to get in the war. We've got to get the army of foot soldiers and warriors. We're not in a time of peace. We're not in a time of rest. There's a war going on. And it's the most important war in the world today. And the ramifications of this war have eternal consequences. Eternal consequences. I've got a example for you here. How many of you can see this little tiny dot I have placed here on the screen? All right. If you can't see it, maybe you have a different quality connection, but I've got a dot sitting right here in the middle. And imagine this little dot that's on your screen. Compare the size of that dot to the room that you're living in. Pretty small dot compared to the room that you're in, right? Compare the size of that dot to your house. Now that dot really seems small. How about the size of that dot compared to the county you live in? Well, that dot is very small. Now compare the size of the dot to the country that you live in. Okay, now we're getting a microscopic level, right? Compare the size of the dot to the whole planet. Or how about this? Compare the size of that dot to the entire universe of planets, all the solar systems, all the galaxies. The size of that dot to all of the heavenly bodies. Pretty insignificant little dot there, isn't it? Well, I'm going to tell you, that dot is the time that you're living in right now compared to eternity. And what you do with this little dot right here, what you do will impact what will happen outside the dot into the time of eternity. Do we realize we have this tiny little speck of time compared to eternity? Now, most people in this world, they're looking at the little speck and saying, what can I get here in this speck? What can I look at and what can I get from myself in this speck? It's nothing. There's nothing here that's going to last but just a little speck of time. In fact, our lives are nothing compared to eternity. And so my question for you, are you focused on the little dot, or are you focused on eternity? question for me too. Where are we focused? Where are we building our lives around? It says, in the age to come, this dot will just be a distant memory. This speck of time that we've lived in. And eventually Yahweh says the former things will not be remembered anymore. And so what we need, my brothers and sisters, what we need is a vision for the kingdom. And I want to inspire you in this today. I want you to seek the vision Yahweh has for you personally. We don't all have the same roles in this. But we need a vision. Individually. And what Yahweh wants from us is our time. That's what He wants. He wants our time. We need to realize how the things that we do in this age will affect eternity. Are we spending our time working toward serving people and turning them to righteousness? That's an important question. What are we doing with our time? Are we acting as if the treasures that Yahweh offers us are insignificant? Do we really value and love our fellow man as much as we say we do? Everything we do can either advance the kingdom of Yahweh or the kingdom of his enemy. What the enemy wants is do-nothing believers. Do nothing, say nothing, sit down, watch his junk that he has for us, his entertainments. That's what he wants. Do-nothing believers. He wants not now believers. Don't have time right now. That's what the enemy wants, not now believers. Tell you what, he's not a not now devil. He's active. He's after you. He's after your children. He's after every soul on this planet. What are you doing about it? Are you a not now believer? Are you a do-nothing believer? Where is your priorities? I'm challenging you because it challenges me. I'm not saying I've arrived. I'm here. I'm come up higher where I'm saying, look at the word here. Look at the word here. At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. This is coming. There's a time of trouble coming, and who will be delivered? Everyone who's found written. All right. It says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament. And those who turn many to righteousness, those who are making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things Yahshua commanded, will shine like the stars forever and ever. Now, brothers and sisters, wouldn't it be lovely to be known in the age to come as one of those who turned many to righteousness, and to see the faces of those that you impacted for righteousness, and to enjoy fellowship with them, knowing that Yahweh worked through you. He used you. Little old you. And you'll shine like the stars forever and ever. It's okay to want to, well, someone says, okay, I shine like the star. Okay, what's so great about that? Listen, Do we value the blessing of Yahweh? I want to shine like the stars forever and ever. How about you? Somewhat wild, and that kind of prideful Tom, EliYah, there, we try to exalt yourself. Listen, it's never pride to desire the blessing of Yahweh. It's never prideful to seek to be exalted in the age to come. It's okay to do that. You know what Yahshua told his disciples? He said, when you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him. And he who invited you, and him come to say to you, give place to this man. And then you begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place. That's where we are now. We'll sit in the lowest place of a servant, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, go up higher. Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. Look, he's telling us, be motivated by it. Go humble yourself, and then someone may say, well, come up higher, and then you'll be glorified. It's okay to desire that. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So our goal today, our goal in this age we live in, is to humble ourselves. But we see here, the goal is that we would be glorified. And let Yahweh choose to glorify whom he glorifies. But we humble ourselves. And we see other scriptures. 1 Peter 5:6 says, therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of Elohim. Why? It says, that he may exalt you in due time. It tells you why. Casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. So it's not a bad thing to desire to be exalted in due time. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It says so it's not bad to want to desire to shine like the stars in the kingdom of Yahweh. Now it doesn't say you'll be a star, or it says you'll shine like them. And the reason why it says you'll shine like the stars, here some scripture here. In the age to come, it says, these are futuristic prophecies. Isaiah 30:20 says, moreover, the light of the moon will be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be sevenfold, as the light of 7 days, in the day that Yahweh binds up the bruise of his people and heals the stroke of their wound. In the age to come, everything will be 7 times brighter. The sun, the moon, and therefore the earth, because Zechariah 14:7, it shall be one day at which is known to Yahweh, neither day nor night, but at evening time it shall happen that it will be light. And so the brightness of the age to come will exceed the brightness of the present world, 7-fold. And there's over and over again in Scripture a biblical association between righteousness and brightness, between righteousness, Torah observance, and light. There's a connection. And it says that those who have turned many to righteousness will shine like the stars. Now, some people have this doorkeeper mentality. They say, well, if I just make it as a doorkeeper, I'll be happy. That sounds like the humble thing to say, but listen, let's not seek the doorkeeper job, brothers. I mean, okay, if that's where you end up, I'll be satisfied too if that's where I end up. But I want to be kings and priests. I mean, I want to desire the greater things. And it's not prideful to desire that. In fact, it's a wicked, wicked thing to not desire that. I said it. I'm repeating it again. It's a wicked thing not to desire the greater blessings. And to just say, I'll just settle for a little bit. I'll skate by the skin of my teeth here, just barely make it in. Listen, if you aim for the doorkeeper job, you may not make it. But if you aim to be seated next to Messiah as one of the kings and priests, then you may end up as a doorkeeper, but at least you're in. Okay? So, listen, it's not a bad thing to desire the greater rewards. In fact, it's a wicked thing not to. So remember, one of the differences between Jacob and Esau. Jacob wrestled the angel all night and would not let him go until he got the blessing. I mean, he even did some underhanded things that I really would not recommend to get the blessing and, the birthright and different things he did. But listen, Yahweh still honored him because Yahweh knew Jacob wanted to be blessed. He valued being blessed by Yahweh. Esau, he just, he seemed like he was more concerned about riches. And Jacob knew that. Now, that's why when he met Esau and 400 men, he said, "Here, you can have all this stuff." And it appeased him. But we see what Yahweh said about Esau was that Esau he hated. In Genesis 25:34, Jacob gave Esau bread and a stew of lentils, and he ate and drank, arose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Did he really despise it, or he just wanted to have something to eat? He thought he was going to die. It says he despised it. He hated it. Because he put a mess of pottage, ahead of the birthright, which was, "Unto your children I will give this land, unto you, to your descendants Abraham, I give this great blessing." And he traded it for a bowl of soup. And so Romans 9:13 says, "As it is written, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated." Now, ask yourself the question, do you value the blessing of Yahweh like Jacob? Are you seeking to actively participate in what he has called you to do? Or are we focusing on the here and now like Esau? Are we selling our birthright for a mess of pottage that will be consumed? We'll enjoy it, but that'll be it. If we don't value Yahweh's blessings, and we're like Esau, more concerned about this world riches and what we gain here, it's a wicked thing, and Yahweh hates it. I can't stress that enough. In Luke 12:31, Yahshua stressed this very thing. He said, "Seek the kingdom of Elohim," and all these other things, what we need, what we'll wear, will be added to you. "Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell what you have and give alms." He's talking to the generation at the end of the age. Provide yourselves money bags which do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I tell you what, and where your heart is where your time is spent, where your thoughts reside. Are we seeking riches and temporary things of this age and ignoring the blessings of Yahweh? Is most of our time spent building an empire and a kingdom that will not stand? Or is most of our time and thoughts spent building a kingdom that shall never fail? When Yahweh gave Adam the command to take dominion, to tend to the garden, and so on, Adam was actually building an eternal kingdom. Yahweh's desire was that Adam would rule the earth forever, would multiply, and all would be under Yahweh's authority. But when death entered the world, everything changed. Now, everything we seek to build in this age today will ultimately be destroyed. It's like building a castle along a beach. The tide comes, you go to this effort to build this huge sandcastle. And it's beautiful. But then the tide comes and washes it all away. So it is. The bank accounts, the houses, the cars, the furniture, the jobs, the income, the businesses, the corporations, the big beautiful buildings, nothing more than castles made of sand. Ecclesiastes 2:11, a very rich man said, I looked at all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Yahshua taught us, Luke 12:15, take heed and beware of covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. He spoke a certain parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But Elohim said to him, Fool! This night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward Elohim. A lot of people talk about estate planning, the goal of managing, accumulating property and wealth. There are shows on Christian radio dedicated just to that alone. The idiocy of the prosperity gospel has produced this kind of mentality. But Yahweh calls those who are putting their trust in their retirements and taking ease fools. You're putting your trust in a nest egg. He said it, not me. He said, fool. This night your soul will be required of you. Yeah, it's amazing the amount of effort that men will go to in order to gain this. Years and years of labor in college. Years and years of labor at various places of employment. Late nights, endless toil, blood, sweat, and tears, all so they can attain something they may never receive. We don't even die. We don't know if we'll die in 5 minutes from now. Now hear me out on this. I'm not against retirement, but hear me out on this. James says, Come now, ye who say, today or tomorrow we shall go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? What is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Master wills, we shall live. Don't even know whether you're going to live another day and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. We don't even know. If we make any plans, we need to acknowledge the giver of life and realize our life is nothing but a vapor that appears for a little time and vanishes away. That is our life on this earth. And so where are our priorities? Where are our eyes focused? Well, he doesn't say you can't have a retirement program. He's saying, so is he who lays up treasure for himself. Whatever treasures that we happen to accumulate, we need to make sure that we are rich toward Elohim with them. And so where are our priorities? Where is our focus? Where are our eyes really looking toward? If it's toward riches, we're told in Proverbs, do not overwork to be rich, Proverbs 23:4. Because of your own understanding, cease. Will you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle toward heaven. I've seen that so many times. And here's a command from Yahshua. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. Matthew 6:19, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is a command. We must lay up treasures in heaven. He commands us. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And so this treasure from heaven it's hidden from the eyes of men. No one can really see it. No one on earth knows what treasures we have in store for us in the age to come. And so let me ask you the question. If you were to die today and you entered into the heavenly places, you was with Messiah, I believe we'll have access to the heavenlies as well as on the earth. If we were to die today and Yahweh was to open your hidden treasure, would there be anything inside? Would he find much in there? If we've been living like Esau, there won't be too much there. Sorry to say. And so what will he find when he opens up the treasure box for you? I'm not saying literally, I'm saying spiritually. The spiritual treasure box. What is there? What is residing inside? Well, I can't answer that for you. This is an individual question for each soul listening to the broadcast. This is a question for you. Only you can answer. Where's your treasures? Where's the talents? And so, Yahshua says, he says, for everyone who has, more will be given. If you don't have a whole lot in there, he says, if you have it, you'll be given more, and you'll have an abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he thinks, even what he has will be taken away. So, if you think you've got this, you got enough, even though it's a little bit, even what you have will be taken away. And so, we need to be among those who have, don't we? And what we need to do, and this is what I want to encourage you in, is to do some spiritual estate planning. Not just physical estate planning. I'm talking about the spiritual estate planning with a specified goal being to build up, to manage, and to accumulate spiritual wealth. Accumulating spiritual acreage and ground. Sometimes that means giving up some of your earthly things. The Proverbs says, Proverbs 13:7, there is one who makes himself rich yet has nothing, and one who makes himself poor yet has great riches. And Yahweh wants to build our spiritual estate in such a way that we have eternal riches that will never perish. And he wants to be the director of your estate. He wants to be the one building your house. Because unless Yahweh builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless Yahweh guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. The only treasure he's going to guard for you is going to be the spiritual treasures. The rest are all going to go out. They'll all burn up with everything else. Now, does this mean that Yahweh wants all believers to be poor as dirt? Not necessarily. He does say, Proverbs 3:9, honor Yahweh with your possessions, and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. To the fellow who decided to store up all that grain, all the good crop for many years, he should have honored Yahweh with his possessions, and then Yahweh would replenish what was taken away. And so with the temporary riches we're given, what we want to do is we want to invest with those possessions in things that honor Yahweh. That's what we want. And our goal is not to make a bunch of money that will one day perish with us. Our goal is to use the physical money that we're given to lay up spiritual wealth that lasts into all eternity. It's called the exchange. And he has a pretty awesome exchange rate. $1 in the kingdom goes a whole long, far way in the age to come. So, I know a brother who had a very good job, making very, very good money, and he got his retirement. And what he did is he decided to buy himself a trailer house, and he's living in it. And he takes most of his money and he invested into spiritual things. And most of it, you'd never know where it goes. It goes different places. But I think his spiritual retirement account is going to be out of this world. Literally. And so we're called to buy wisdom at all costs. Buy things that invest in the kingdom of Yahweh. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding. That's what we're called to do. It says, this is where we're at today. We're in this age of Laodicea, Not really enough spiritual focus for many of us because of the things that are competing forces in our life. And Yahshua talked to the assembly at Laodicea, and he said, these things says the Amen, the faithful and true witness. He says, the beginning of the creation of Elohim, I know your works, that you're neither cold nor hot. I could wish you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. What's causing them to be lukewarm and not really be where they're supposed to be? Well, because you say, I am rich, I have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. We live in a wealthy nation, most of us listening. If you have an internet connection, you probably have a pretty good amount of wealth, even if you're considered poor in our society. Well, because you say I'm rich, he says. See, the dangers of riches are that they cause us to marginalize our faith in Yahweh. So he counsels to buy from him gold refined in fire, that you may be rich. We need to seek to be a refined people, with white garments that we may be clothed. The shame of your nakedness may not be revealed. Anoint your eyes with eye salve that you may see. We need to see beyond the things of this age. We need to look into eternity and build up our treasures there. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten, therefore be zealous and repent. All right. Brothers, this is the age we live in. We're in an age of plenty. The tendency in our age is to neither be cold or be hot, either one. And we must be careful we're not assuming something. We must be careful we're not assuming that the heat we have is actually hot in Yahweh's eyes. It may only be lukewarm to him. When I get in the shower, my wife feels the water temperature and says, that's not very hot. Now, if I were to take a shower with the kind of water temperature she takes one, I would walk out with second-degree burns. So The question is all relative. Is our heat that we're producing really hot in Yahweh's eyes? We may think it is, but what standard is he holding us to? That's the question. Well, I think it's safe to assume that the heat the disciples were projecting in the first century would have been qualified as hot. Are we there? They set the tone for us as Yahweh's people in this age. Their enemies were saying they came in and they turned the world upside down. They took Yahshua's command to go and take dominion seriously. And they are the pattern for us to look at. Yahshua said that we would do greater works than him. Well, what are we waiting on? Let's do it. And how do we get started? How do we build up and accumulate this wealth in an age where temporary wealth's focused? Well, we got to value Yahweh's blessing. We've talked about that. That's number one thing. And don't be afraid to suffer. Don't be afraid to suffer. Yahshua, he tells the Laodiceans, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me. To him who overcomes." Overcomes what? Temptations, struggles, trials, suffering. "I will grant to sit with me on my throne." Wow. "As I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to congregations." To sit with Messiah on his throne, at his table, what an awesome honor for people like us who don't deserve that. Take a pile of junk and turn it into something awesome. That's the power of Elohim. That's the power of his grace. But we can't be afraid to suffer because Yahshua did. Luke 6:22, he said, "Blessed are you when men hate you." You're blessed. Wow, all these people hate you? Man, you are so blessed. And they're excluding you too? And they're reviling you? And they're casting out your name as if you're evil? Because of the Son of Man that you follow? Because of the Savior that you're seeking to walk and live as? He says, "Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. For indeed your reward is great in heaven." You get this? Rejoice and leap for joy. For in like manner their fathers did the prophets. How? Leap for joy when you're hated? Leap for joy when they exclude you? Leap for joy when they mock you and revile you? Leap for joy when they cast your name as evil? Yes. Rejoice and leap, leap, leap for joy, he says. Oh, why? He must know something. And he can't really explain to us what Yahweh has in store. It'd be kind of like trying to explain to a man who the only thing he ever ate in his whole life was a pile of corn mush. That was his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And try to explain to him what apple pie tastes like. All right, tell you what, I'm going to give you something that's so great that you'll leap for joy when you taste it. Try to explain to him what it tastes like. Try to relate to him. He has no reference point. I was sharing last week about the bird in the cage. The cage is all he's ever known. He doesn't realize the joys of flying around and going from tree branch to tree branch and the blessing that's waiting for him if he was to be set free. And it could be a dangerous world, but it's worth it. So, maybe we don't really value the blessing because we can't relate to anything better or how much better it could be. But listen, I'm sure some of us have had just a taste of the sweetness of Yahweh. Just a taste of it. A moment of where the cup overfloweth. Can we be like Jacob and believe his word that Yahweh's blessings are worth it? Can we put value in his blessing and not rest till we have it? Can we? Can we leap for joy? He goes on to say, but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full, for you shall hunger. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. If there is ever an accurate picture of the United States, it is a people who are full, a people who laugh now. Our country is full of overeating rich people, fat people, who are sitting and laughing their heads off at the entertainments of the world. We can't be among them. Let's be among those who value what Yahweh's rewards truly are and are willing to go through persecution, people who cast our name as evil and so on. And so, so much emphasis is placed on the things which are not, the things which will simply fly away like an eagle toward heaven. And so little effort goes into that which will remain for trillions and trillions and trillions and quadrillions and quintillions and septillions and however high you can go, years and years and years. Where are we going to put our focus? Are you motivated yet? I just want to finish well. I don't want to lose my reward. As Yeshua says, don't lose your reward. How do you get started on this? How do you get started on a spiritual retirement program? The typical church model is that only certain people are called into ministry. Oh, well, this so-and-so, he had a child. He grew up and the child felt called into ministry. And he decided to go to cemetery. And they'll get trained and they get hired by some church, hopefully has a good pension so they can retire at age 65. And, that's the Catholic Church mentality. That's the Catholic Church model. That's the, leave the ministry to us. Don't try this at home. We're experts. That's not Yahweh's model. Never was. Yahweh's model is that every single one of us has a function in the body of Messiah. And therefore, every single one of us are called into ministry. That's you. You're called into ministry. That means every one of you in the sound of my voice does that mean every one of you? Yes, every one of you in the sound of my voice are called into ministry. Every one of you are ministers. The word minister means to serve. That's what it means. I'll call me a minister. I'm a minister. I want to serve. Now, does that mean that everybody who listens to the broadcast today needs to come up and give a teaching? No. Does that mean that everybody has to be a pastor? No. Sadly, the pastors are the do-all, one-man band having to do everything. That's not Yahweh's model. Does that mean everybody's an evangelist? No, not at all. We all have gifts and talents that should be used for accumulating spiritual wealth, all of which are essential and an important part of the goal of fulfilling the Great Commission. All we got to do is read Matthew 25. And you'll find out there's a whole lot more than just being a pastor or a minister. Everybody's called into ministry. Every single one of you are called into ministry. Matthew 24, Yahshua spends a whole lot of time explaining what's going to happen at the end of the age and at the time just before he returns. And after he explains all that, he says this. He says to them, who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Surely I say to you, he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, My master's going to delay his coming. He's not going to come tomorrow. It's going to be some time way far off. He begins to beat his fellow servants. You got to believe this doctrine or else. And eat and drink with the drunkards, false doctrines. The master of that servant will come on a day when he's not looking for him, at an hour he's not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he goes on to say in Matthew 25, then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened unto 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise, and 5 of them were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight the cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. The wise answered, no, lest there should not be enough for us and you, but rather go to those who sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came. It's talking about the end of the age. And those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Afterward the other virgins came also, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered and said, surely I say to you, I don't know you. Watch therefore, for you do not know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man's coming. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the final generation, which could very well be us. You don't know the day or the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. It's the generation where the Son of Man is coming to meet his bridegroom. Are we filling our lamps with oil right now? Are we like Joseph, who took the extra grain and stored it for later? Are we filling our hearts and our minds with the word of Yahweh rather than the words of man on TVs and internets and blogs and Twitters and Facebooks? Are we so busy checking our Facebook messages we forget to check the Bible's messages, Yahweh's messages? For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And the one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, another 1, each one according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. Likewise he who had received 2 gained 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Master, you've delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Lovely. But he who had received 2 talents came and said, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. You're a hard man. I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what's yours. But his master answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. Wicked and lazy. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. In other words, if you're not going to use your talent, give it to someone who will. Therefore take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But for him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. There's that saying again. And cast the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. He's talking about talents, and here's what he says. He goes on to explain deeper here. He goes, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, he will sit on the throne of his glory. All nations will be gathered before him. He will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. You cared. You cared about me. You loved me. Then the righteous will answer him, Master, when did we see you hungry or feed you or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, Surely I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brother, you did it to me. We need to call the strangers into the body of Messiah, don't we? We need to care for those who need the robe of righteousness, don't we? We need to care for those who are hungry and thirsty for all that's right, spiritually and physically. Then he will say to those on the left hand, Depart from me, get away from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, you did not take me in. Naked, you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, you did not visit me. Then they will answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you? He will answer them, saying, Assuredly I say unto you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. See, the righteous care about the needs of people around them. The wicked do not. And that's why they're not motivated. They're focused on their own needs, their own desires, building their own kingdoms. But my point here is there's a whole lot more going on here than just teaching and being a pastor and being what's commonly called a minister. The sheep were those who were busy with spiritual investments and a personal ministry of some kind, helping the poor and needy. The goats did not make the spiritual investments, but they ignored the people around them. What we need to do is realize that we have been trained and hardwired since we were infants and babies and toddlers and young children and so on, like children of Babylon. Dog eat dog, get what you can. And we need to retrain our mind. We've been Greekized. We're so Greekized, we don't even realize how Greekized we are. What we need to do is think Hebraically. We need to not be in a rut. If we're in a rut, if you're in a rut, it's because you lack something. You lack a vision. Because where there is no vision, the people perish. He that keepeth the law, happy is he. One of the things I've learned is how important it is to have this vision. I'm going to detail this now. Having a vision is an important part of being a believer. And without that vision, we're going to have this tendency to struggle with sin, with the weight of the world. And remember what I shared earlier about that little dot. Remember that. We focused on that little dot, or we focused on eternity. Ask yourself this question. Where are you focused? On having a vision and applying that vision of the kingdom? Or are you focused on the little dot? You know that scripture that says, with no vision the people perish? You know what it actually reads in the Hebrew? Where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint. And this is the danger for our children. If we don't instill in them a vision, a reason to live, the enemy has no shortage of alternative visions they can pursue. We need to instill in our children a vision for ministry. Please learn from the mistakes of others. Cultivate a vision in your children's hearts for ministry at a young age. Learn what their gifts are. Learn what their callings are. And let these gifts and callings be used for the glory of Yahweh early. Get them in the habit. Train their minds to serve. So many times we see Yahweh working with families. Noah and his wife and their 3 sons and their wives. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. King David and Solomon. Elizabeth, Zacharias, and John the Baptist. Joseph and Mary. Yahshua the Messiah and James his brother. Andrew, Peter. Sons of Zebedee, James and John. I've seen this so many times in my own personal walk. There's some families that catch the vision, some that don't. And we want to be families that do. And when you develop a vision together and understand how and why Yahweh's put you on this earth together, you'll begin to develop an identity as a family. You know, if you went and told your child or your son or somebody, go out there and dig a hole 5 feet in the ground, 5 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet, dig a 5-foot deep hole. You go out there with a shovel, and be like, all right, well, here we go. But if you told him there was a treasure underneath that thing that he could retire on, well, he'd be out there with a shovel digging as fast as he could to get to the bottom, wouldn't he? You see, it's all about work is work, but a lot of it has to do, the drudgery of it, has to do whether or not you're inspired. Whether you have a vision, there's some goal I'm trying to attain here at the bottom of this pile of dirt. And so we need that, Now, what kind of vision? I learned from there are multiple places where we can seek a vision, or we can develop a vision, I should say. We need to find what Yahweh's vision is for us. I learned from a man named Jeff Botkin a very good model. I shared this at the feast last year, and I'll just share here briefly. But there are 4 areas in where we need to develop a vision, at least 4 areas. And they are like this. They are, number 1, managing our estate, the place where we happen to live, the home life, our family, our children, our husband and wife, how the husband's going to treat the wife, how the wife is going to treat the husband, how the parents are going to raise the children, what kind of outside influences are going to be permitted in the home, how are we going to steward our finances. We need to lay all this down. If you're newly married, do it now. If you've been married a long time, you and your wife need to come and discuss this together. There may be areas of disagreement, areas of struggle. It has to happen. You have to have a vision for your family. Yahweh's vision for you. His leading in your life. His specific leading in your life individually and together as a family. What are you called to do? Secondly, business development. That would be how income is going to be generated for the purposes ultimately of developing resources for building Yahweh's kingdom. Now, does that mean you can never, ever have any entertainments or never go out on vacation or go and do things together? No, because even that in and of itself is building the kingdom. Why? Because even Yahshua took his disciples away from the crowds every once in a while and said, here, let's go relax. Let's go take it easy because you're getting overwhelmed. We all need that. You need a time of reprieve. Nothing wrong with that. But our vision and our goal is how much is too much. Where do we place value here? Where do we place value there? Are we getting this? Imagine writing all this stuff down. What kind of job are you going to have? Are you going to try to work from home and be with your family? You're going to go out in the work world. What are you going to do? Third area, nation building. How are we going to turn the nations we live in to Yahweh? We need to identify the areas that we feel Yahweh wants us to subdue. He wants us to take dominion. He wants us to have influence in the world. And find out what those are and do it and write it down. What area do you feel called in? And I want to get more into what those areas are here in just a minute. But we need to reach the heathen. And we need to bring the stranger into the flock and cause him no longer be stranger and foreigner, but to be a part of the commonwealth of Israel. And so that's the third area. Where is Yahweh calling you in ministry to the world? Because he's calling everybody to this to some degree. Some will be the helpers behind the scenes, and I'll get more into that in a minute. And then there's bodybuilding. I'm not talking about, go out and lift weights. I'm talking about the body of Messiah, using our spiritual gifts for edifying the assembly, for the congregation, the people of Yahweh to be strong enough to face our culture that we live in. We need each other. And we want to identify the areas of influence where Yahweh would be instructing us and causing us to build up and edify the body of the Messiah. These are the 4 areas we need a vision. And write it down. Go into great detail. Go into great detail. How are we going to, what are our children called to? What are their gifts? What are their callings? How is it that Yahweh put us together for some reason? For some reason, we're all together in this family. He's the one that decided these children would be in my home. He created these children. And so in some fashion, our visions are going to complement one another. They may not all be the same, but they're going to complement each other. And we want to set up multiple generations of visions, of something that would motivate us, something that would just drive us. When we look at the world and we see some area of ground taken over by the enemy, then we are like, oh man, I really wish this would change. This part of what's happening in the world today, really I got this drive in me. I want to go do something about it. We see some area the enemy is wreaking havoc in the world, causing major problems, and it really bothers us. Some examples. Ministry to the fatherless, the children, the youth. We talked a couple months ago about the organization. Even if you don't have children, you got to minister to your own children first. But the children that are out there who are fatherless, we need to care about them. There's a Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. There's people in your community maybe has a fatherless child or even a motherless child. You can come in and you can minister to them, and you be ministering to Messiah himself when we do that. There's ministry of influence, against abortions, the murder of little innocent children. I couldn't believe the testimony I heard this week of how a second trimester abortion is done. They really rip the arms and legs off the children while they're still alive. It's sick. And that's one area I feel strongly in. Ministry to the aged, the widows, the elderly who are locked away in nursing homes, and especially in the big cities, more so, locked away in nursing homes, and no one goes to them. No one says, here, I will be what your son was supposed to be or what your children were supposed to be. I'll come in, I'll bless you, and lead them to Messiah, because they're in the last throes of their life. There's a ministry to the poor, the giving of alms. There are people who, for one reason or another, down and out in their finances, and they're barely surviving. Third world countries, and even some homeless here in the United States. And they don't just need money all the time. Sometimes they need more than that. They need other things. You pour money into it, it may not help them permanently. There's other needs that they really have. A lot of the homeless out there today have some kind of mental condition. Ministry to those who are in prison. That's an awesome prison ministries. We've heard about those. The ministry to the sick, and this is what I talked about, mentally and physically. Some people have skills in the physical healing. Some people have the gift of healing. They lay hands on them and they get well. Some people are able to heal people with their mental issues and work with them and bring Yahshua into those places where he needs to reign and subdue. Ministry of prayer and fasting. Some people just have that. They are prayer warriors, and they could spend hours upon hours every day praying and fasting. And that's a very important part of the body of Messiah. There are certain people that's their calling. That's what they want to do. They want to know what the prayer needs are. Give me a prayer list somewhere. Give me a prayer list. I'll set it in front of me and I will pray for these people. I'll fast for them. There are some people who are in that in a strong way, and I'm thankful for them. Ministry of music would be one. The Levites, they had certain people that were of Levi who had musical talents, and they were functioning in the temple as the temple choir, so to speak, with the instruments and so on. And today we have the blessing of being able to record the music and have it replayed in other people's homes. I've got a recording studio here, right here as part of the broadcast studio. Also functions as a musical recording studio. If you got that gift, I can record you. Ministry of elders. Boy, does the body of Messiah ever need elders. I mean qualified elders. I don't mean just older people. I mean people who are qualified to function in that capacity. And there's multiple things that elders do. They make decisions. They have some level of authority in the body. And we need qualified people in that role. Ministry of teaching, that's where Yahweh has me right now. The ministry of helps administration. There are certain people that, they're helpers. They just love to help. They get their joy out of helping. My daughter Leanna is a big one on that. She's a big helper. She loves to help. So she has this, I tell her all the time, you have the gift of helps. There's actually one of the gifts mentioned in the Bible. You have the gift of helps. And so we can all develop visions centered around our services toward others. And we can build our estate, our business, our calling in the world, our calling in the body of Messiah around these areas that motivate us. And this is not the only 4 areas. I mean, there's lots of areas besides these. It's not a complete list, but I tell you, when you develop your vision, you can have specific objectives that you're trying to reach within that mission and that vision, and if you follow out those objectives, that will ensure that you have an area of focus, little by little, that will motivate you and inspire you until that task is completed. And again, that list I gave you is not necessarily a complete list. If there's nothing there that does stand out to you, that's all right. Pray for Yahweh to show you something that does. Maybe there is something that stands out. Great. Then do it. Sit down with your family. If you're single, maybe a trusted elder, or just set a piece of paper on one side and a Bible on the other and start praying for Yahweh to show you his vision for you and write it down. My passion is proclaiming Yahweh's name, bringing Christians to the Torah, building up the body of Messiah, Maybe your area of interest is a little different. That's perfectly normal and acceptable. Maybe your area of interest is completely in a different area. But on the earth, we all own different pieces of land, don't we? We all have different areas that we live in. We rent or we live, we buy or whatever. And yet this whole earth is Yahweh's in all its fullness. You may have certain areas of ground that he's calling you to take, which is different than the ground I'm taking. And that's all right. And different than the ground somebody else is taking. And so we have our spiritual estate planning that we need to develop here. And you may have a different area of ground to conquer, and that's all right. But with families, there are inheritances involved, and we all families have one estate together in a bigger way. But if we all just work alone, that we won't be nearly as effective as we all, parents, children, grandparents, grandchildren. If everybody worked together as a cohesive unit for Yahweh's kingdom, wow. And if you have children, or even if you don't, maybe you and your family could even have this chart. I drew up. Remember the chart? We got the chart, and something happened today, and you rejoice in it, and so this whole area the whole world is full of darkness. And you go forth and you shine a little brightness into the one area over here in the corner of the world, and you say, well, praise Yahweh, we got this chart, and we're going to start filling this chart with little yellow squares, the stickers, or however you want to do it, and start adding things. But this is not about self-glory. It's about what Yahweh is doing through you. When in Acts 15:12, the multitude kept silent and listened to Barnabas and Paul, declaring how many miracles and wonders Paul did, Barnabas did. No, Yahweh, Elohim has worked through them. So it's not just patting yourself on the back. That's not really what it's about, honestly. It's about keeping our eyes focused on what's important. And hang that chart in a prominent place. Put it on a wall or a refrigerator or whatever, and just start adding squares. Your children, they go talk to somebody, and turn them to do the right thing. Put the square up there. You share a testimony of what Elohim has done through you at work today, or at somewhere else, or you were today, or at the grocery store. Add a little square to the chart. Taking ground. For Yahweh, we're adding more and more ground. We're bringing light into where darkness may dwell. And as a family, the potential is awesome. And it's not about tooting our own horns or bragging about what we've done. It's for recounting what Yahweh has done in you, glorifying what He is doing, encouraging each other in the way. Tell you what, our children get motivated by these kinds of things. We want our children to see themselves as arrows ready to be shot out at the enemy. And if we have a multiple generation of estates that we pull resources together to help, it's more than an estate, brothers. It's more than just this estate. It's an empire. As we go forth and we start to build our empire with the goal being world conquest, and we start pulling our resources together as believers, as multiple families, awesome. Awesome, awesome. We want our families to be known in the gates in the age to come, don't we? Don't you want your family to be known in the gates? And, when you're done with one chart, start another chart. We want to have pages and pages of squares of things He's called us to speak life into, a pile of spiritual wealth that in the age to come, or even in the times present, we have difficult times, we're struggling spiritually. Look back at that chart and say, boy, I don't want to lose all those rewards. And it's okay to be motivated by that. Yahshua says, do this, 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 and surely you will not lose your reward. Because you know something? There's blessings in this age too, not just future. How many of you listening today have had moments where you've suffered from depression, or fear and anxiety, or a feeling of worthlessness. Yeah, you know what the Word says. You know the Bible says that you're special to Yahweh, but somehow you just don't feel it. You don't. This doesn't get to that identity. And sometimes we feel worthless because we're not doing anything worthwhile. Years ago, we used to visit an elder who he'd been keeping the Sabbath, the Torah, and the using Yahweh, and since the 1960s he'd been doing this. Him and his dad taught him to do it, and he was suffering from depression and anxiety. His wife had died, and we'd try to go over there and cheer him up, and we'd sing songs, and we'd read the Word with him and try to bear his burden in Messiah, but nothing seemed to help. This man was very knowledgeable. He had written a number of scripture studies that blessed a number of people over the years, and he was elderly man. He was in his 60s, and he couldn't seem to pull out of depression. Well, he decided to go and attend a gathering, and when he was there were other people in the body of Messiah that recognized him and greeted him and says, that one article really blessed me, or this thing that you wrote years ago, that really helped me. And he began to look, and he started looking around, and he started seeing all the needs that were there. And people had appreciation for what he had been done, and he was encouraged to get back into ministry again. Well, he did. He started writing articles. He started serving the body of Messiah. You know what? All my talking, all my music, all whatever, none of that worked. But when he started getting off his can and started being about his Father's business, and he started serving people, when he started blessing people, and he started to see the fruits of how he was blessing people, the anxiety, the feeling of worthlessness, the depression, all disappeared. It was gone. The smile was back on his face, because when you're only focused on yourself, that's the most miserable existence there is. And so many of our problems stem from a lifestyle that focuses on self. But the more focused we are on serving others, the less self-focused we'll be, and the happier we'll be. The happier we'll be. And the busier we are serving others, the more we're doing what we're actually created to do. What Yahshua said in Matthew 5:19, he said, "Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them," does and teaches, "he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." And he also said later, he said, "He who is greatest among you shall be your servant." You see a connection here between the two greats? The more we are focused on others and serving others, the easier it will be to do and teach the commands, because we're not self-focused. When we're self-focused, it's really hard to overcome sin, to overcome temptations. But when we're others-focused, we're already used to laying down our lives. We're already used to giving things up. And the busier we are serving Yahweh and others, the more victory we'll gain over temptations and trials. Serving takes the focus off ourselves. I've been going through a trial the last, I don't know how long. If it wasn't for me serving you every week, I don't know where I'd be. I'd be a mess. Because there's a connection between serving others and overcoming temptations and overcoming trials and difficulties. There's a connection between these two scriptures. So we need to understand. We want to become great. We want to be the stars in the kingdom, right? We want to shine like the brightness of the firmament. Well, we need to be about serving. We need to get the warrior's mindset on and get the consume and enjoy mindset obliterated. And so many of our personal problems will go away when we do that. If we just step out in faith and start being about our Father's business and walking in the vision He places in our hearts. And so it says, Elohim has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Therefore do not be ashamed of the testimony of our Master. Have faith. Believers do not retreat in fear of the enemy. Believers do not retreat at fear of the enemy. We attack. But we have to get off the American playground and go forth into the spiritual battleground, making exploits. We are in a war. You're not on the sidelines. You're not a spectator. And you're not a cheerleader. You're in it. We're all participants on one side or the other. We're pushing one way or the other. And some of us are supply men, some are foot soldiers, others might be officers, but we're all needed. We all have a function in the body. And Yahweh don't need a big army to do a great work. Paul, Apollos, Luke, Barnabas, Aquila, Priscilla, Timothy, Titus, they did a lot together to bring the good news of Yahshua to the Gentile world. Yahshua chose just 12 men. And they were all homeless. Every single one of them were homeless men. And we see what a small number of men can do and accomplish by the power of Yahweh's Spirit. They testified before kings. They established communities of believers in various cities throughout the world. I have no doubt that Yahweh can accomplish a lot with a small number of people, because the battle is Yahweh's. And so the only question is, who wants to go forth and subdue the earth, taking dominion? There are many ways to accomplish it. Draw up the vision for you and your family. Find the things that inspire you. Find out the town He's given you so you can cause it to double the increase. He will be with you. Now, next week, I want to share a study on how we can discover what our spiritual gifts are, what our callings are. If you feel like you need some clarity on that, where Yahweh has you and His vision for you, and you want a deeper understanding of how to seek out what that is, I encourage you to tune in next week, and we'll talk about that. But if we can catch a vision for ministry of others, and seek to be known in the gates, seek to walk in love, seek to walk in compassion, faithfulness, and service, and in truth, with passion, with a vision before us, walking with Yahweh, being about our Father's business, putting down our toys and picking up the armor of Yahweh, and going forth as bold warriors to take ground for Him, that we might bring all of this world to a place of love and peace and joy, and be seated next to our Savior, the Savior of men, who fills us with an unmatchable, awesome love. Yahweh, help us. Fill each one within the sound of my voice with your vision, Abba Yahweh, for their life, your calling on their life. Open their eyes to see it. Show all of us why we are here on the earth. Show us our purpose. Show us your plan for us. Show us, Father, your will for us. Help us, Father, to know what you want us to do, how you've called us to love. We know you've called us to love, but how have you called us to love? In what manner have you called us to love? In what service have you called us to? Open our eyes to see the needs that are in the world we live, in the community that we live. We don't want to be lazy and unprofitable servants. We want you to say to us, you've been faithful over a few things. Now you'll be granted many things. Enter into the joy of your Master. We want to hear from you. Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. As we set aside the things that we have, as we use the things that we have to honor you with them, Father, glorify your name. Through and by your great Son, Yahshua HaMashiach. May your kingdom and your will be established on the earth through us. For truly yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, and the majesty, and all praise and honor and worship belongs to you, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh our mighty one, forever and ever. In Yahshua's name, may Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh have mercy on us all.